My name is Leticia Costa, and I'm a director of the Subiendo Academy, and we're very excited to have all of you here joining us today for our first luncheon. This is our 10th year of Subiendo, and it's been a very exciting road for us to be on, and we're very excited to have this next cohort of students, and just listening and talking to them. The future is bright, and we're just so grateful to have them participating in this academy. These rising leaders are going to do great things for this world, and it's just very exciting to have these conversations with all of you today. I'd like to thank our table hosts who have given their time and talent to be with us today. If you wouldn't mind standing so we can acknowledge you and say thank you for giving your time. You've been joining us year after year, and it just makes such a difference. Thank you. Before we get started, we do have, as you know, we usually have one of our student leaders come up and introduce our keynote speaker. And this is a great way to practice those communication skills and to just kind of showcase our talent that we have here in the room. And we've got a great speaker joining us today. Gwen Houston has come all the way in from Seattle. We're just very excited to have her joining us today. But no further ado, we'd like to bring up Isaiah Reyes, who will be introducing Gwen Houston. Isaiah.
Good afternoon, Subiendo. Gwen is an accomplished, forward-thinking, and result-driven global diversity and exclusion executive focused on the strategic direction, implementation, and alignment of global diversity and inclusion initiatives to ensure maximum impact on business growth and talent innovation. Former Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for several top Fortune 50 companies, including Microsoft, Campbell Soup, Aetna, and Nike. With 25 years experience as a global business leader and strategist across multiple industries, Gwen is highly regarded as an expert in the field of global diversity and inclusion. She is a frequent presenter at national and international conferences, making numerous appearances as a subject matter expert on organizational changes, leadership, and diversity and inclusion. Please help me welcome Gwen Houston.
Thank you. Thank you, Isaiah. Somebody's got to unmute me. Okay.
There you go. You're good.
There's two. There's There's one for video and one for.
Okay. You're good.
Okay, thanks. Sorry for that little technical difficulty right there, but thank you for that nice introduction. It is, it's a real honor to be here today with you. I'll be honest and tell you, I live in Seattle, so getting back and forth from Austin to Seattle is not easy. And when Leticia and the team originally invited me to come out here today and be with you, I had just left Austin. It was about a month or so ago, and my initial reaction was, oh my God, I gotta fly all the way back to Austin from Seattle. I don't think I can do it. And then I clicked on the link about Subiendo. I'd never heard of it before. And as I read through it, I was so enthralled, so impressed, and I thought, I have to go back. I see so much of myself in the students who are here, in each of you, and I knew I wanted to be a part of it. It's certainly something I know I could have benefited from when I was a young person. And so that was a big part of my reason for coming back today. And as I think about being an aspiring high school student, I knew I wanted to change the world. I wasn't sure exactly how I was gonna do it or to what degree someone like me could make a difference. I just knew that I wanted to be about affecting positive change and being part of the solution. Much of my aspiration to be a good student and do well really came from my community. I basically had the school of life around me, and I saw what was happening for my people and people in my community. And I really wanted to aspire to achieve more. I wanted to make my parents proud, and I wanted to go to college. I wanted to be among that first generation to do that. And so I have one brother and one sister, so among the three of us, I'm the youngest. And I think together we realized when we looked around our community that we had to make a better way for ourselves in terms of life options. We didn't really want to stay there and not have a future, not have an aspiration to change and grow and learn and develop. And so every day, our mantra was pretty much this: wake up, kick butt, and repeat. Now, when I say kick butt, I really do mean metaphorically and academically, although there was some real kicking butt going on in the environments we were in too. But we knew that life was a hustle, and we knew that hard work and a great education was the way out. And this was what inspired us moving forward. And so today, I'm here to say, I understand the places you come from. I understand how hard it can be to rise above, but you're already here and you're on your way. And I hope you agree that every day you got to wake up, kick butt, and repeat. Okay, moving forward, let's see. Is it the red button? Was it this one?
Yeah, that one should be it.
Just go that way? Yeah. Okay, we'll do the old-fashioned. Maybe it's stuck.
Maybe it's frozen.
Okay. A moment for technical difficulties. There we go. All right. So, that's me, 8 years old. We all had that look. Bangs, ponytail, that was the thing. So I was born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana. Woohoo, Lafayette? You're kidding me.
No, I'm from Lafayette and Burbridge.
Okay, well, way to go, girl, home girl in the audience. Lafayette, for those who don't know, is mostly central Louisiana. It's about 2.5 hours from north of New Orleans. It is heavy Creole Cajun traditions. People are very connected to their communities in their land. And then anybody know what Jim Crow segregation is? What Jim Crow? Just shout it out.
Jim Crow laws were like laws that would separate like people who were white and black.
That's right. So Jim Crow laws were local and state laws in former Confederate states, where after Reconstruction, these laws were put in place to effectively separate or segregate, as she said, black people and white people. And usually this meant all public facilities were segregated. So I grew up in that environment. I grew up with this filter of a black and white world. And in that black and white world, all of our public facilities were segregated. So I grew up drinking from the colored water fountain in Sears. I grew up going to every doctor's office through the back door. I grew up going to every movie theater and sitting in the colored section, which was upstairs, until I was 9 years old. And after that, these laws, well, 1965 was really when the Civil Rights Acts were passed that supposedly got rid of the separate and equal status and tried to integrate society. But in those Southern communities, people still were living in that mindset after 1965. So this was my reality. And then at 9 years old, all of a sudden the signs went away, and supposedly we could now enter into the same public spaces as white people. But as you can imagine, it was a hard cycle to break. And so my parents, who were very hardworking people, and like that generation, they believed in hard work, and a great education led to a better life. And so in 1968, they made a pivotal decision that really changed and transformed my life and my siblings. In 1968, they decided to move me from an all-black Catholic elementary school right next door to my home to an all-white school across town. I was in the 3rd grade, and get this, it took place over Christmas break. Now, the clincher is that I had never had any interactions with a white child. None. We didn't talk to each other, we didn't play together, we didn't live near each other. We would see each other in places, but never connect because of our parents' swift warnings and recommendations that we stay in our place. So that January 1968, I became the first black kid in the 3rd grade to integrate St. Genevieve Elementary School. And if you think about 1968, what else happened in 1968? Anybody know? Yes. Who? Say it. King was assassinated. So this was January. I go into this school. Many unhappy white families that this black kid is now coming and changing their world. And then 4 months later, King dies. So I knew they were very challenging and turbulent times, but I also knew that my parents' decision was the right decision to help me prepare for the world ahead. So it was a pivotal one. Let's see if I can get this. All right. I think I got it. Yeah. But first, of course, I had to figure out my sense of purpose. Thinking about what is it that I really want to do with my life, both personally and professionally, right? I had to think about the road to getting this education. I was lucky to have parents who made sacrifices so that my siblings and I could go to, from that elementary school, I went on to the Girls Academy in my city and really received a great education. But again, a lot of sacrifices to do that. But I think the notion was, finding that sense of purpose was important to me because I knew if I did that, it would fuel my passion, my sense of motivation, and my resilience to get the job done because I knew it wasn't going to be easy. All right, this technology is wrecking me. I came from Microsoft. This is like, wait a minute. Okay, come on. Yeah, okay. All right, so when it comes to finding sense of purpose, I also wanted not just a sense of purpose, I wanted to do meaningful work in the world, right? We all want to do that. And for me, I already knew that I wanted to work on issues of social justice and equity. I just didn't know how that would come about. And so if you look at this Venn diagram, it's a really cool way to think about purpose. And I'm sure many of you have spent time in the past and certainly this week thinking about it. But it's this notion of figuring out what is it that you love to do. By the way, you're pretty good at it. The world really needs it. And hey, guess what? You get paid for it, right? That's the sweet deal. But thinking about that can also take a while. It can take a lot of time. So as I began my educational journey, I decided to focus on a career in law. In high school, I was a debater. I did cross-examination debate. I made it to the nationals. My brother and I actually were a terrific debating partner. He was 2 years older, so he taught me a lot. And so my parents thought I loved to argue the point a lot. So naturally, they felt going to law school was a good idea. But I was also interested in social justice, so I really wanted to think about public policy. So I chose to get a degree in political science from the University of Louisiana, which is in my hometown. And then while there, had some really great opportunities to get a scholarship. The Harry Truman Scholarship is given to students in public policy who want to pursue careers in public policy. And it was a big boost to pay for my graduate school education. I also received a National Science Foundation scholarship for graduate school, and so I was able to really pay for both of my graduate degrees here at the University of Texas. And I received joint degrees in law and a master's of public policy from UT. And I put this picture up here of Barbara Jordan. Anybody familiar with who Barbara Jordan is? Okay, you need to read up, folks, because the campus is filled with her. There's a statue not far from here that maybe you'll see on a tour. But those of you from Houston, anybody from Houston here? Okay, then Barbara Jordan was your representative in Congress for a while, okay? And she was the former US congressperson who was pivotal during the Watergate hearings of Richard Nixon. So if you think about American history and what you learned about Watergate, she was a pivotal part of that process. And so after her career, she came to teach here at the LBJ school, and she was my advisor and mentor and toughest teacher by far during that time. But she really impressed upon those of us who took her class to be about something bigger than ourselves. She talked a lot about not being hollow men and women, and to stand for purpose and change in a positive way. And honestly, her words just stayed with me over all these years. And I was lucky enough to be one of her former students who built a relationship with her before she passed away untimely, at a young age. But it's people like that who can inspire us all, and help us to take on the bigger goals in life. In terms of career path, this was all over the place for a minute, but after I graduated from grad school, it was really hard to find a job that allowed me to use both of my degrees. Joint degrees were very new. So if you haven't figured it out, I'm a little bit older than you guys, just slightly older. But back when I came to UT, joint degrees were a new thing. And they were so new that the schools didn't always align in terms of registration. So registration for one school might be a week ahead of the other one, yet you were expected to take classes at both, but you couldn't register for stuff and get everything synced up. So it was kind of crazy. It was also an all or nothing degree. So if you're thinking about that here, I don't know if it's still that way or not, Leticia, but back then, if you graduated, got all your law school, but you didn't write your master's thesis, you lost both degrees after 4 years. So a lot of pressure. So after I graduated, I went to work for the Austin City Attorney's Office. I was an environmental lawyer because I was interested in environmental issues, but I really wasn't sure what to do with myself. But I met a lot of great attorneys there who helped me think about the future. And then one day I got a call from someone in the Texas Legislative Budget Office who said, we're looking for someone just like you with dual degrees, a background in both public policy and law. And so I took this great job working for the Texas legislature. This was when Rick Perry was a freshman member of the Texas legislature, right before Ann Richards became governor. So those were kind of my formative years as a young lawyer. Ultimately, I liked the job, but it was the time when Texas was running out of oil money, and we were in special session after special session, and it was a grind. I also became very disillusioned as a young lawyer. I found that some of the issues we were working on to drive social change in Texas were being undermined by policy and political deals in the back room in the 11th hour under the table. And I became very frustrated and very disillusioned that those things happened, and that I wasn't able to have the impact that I'd worked so hard to have. So took a break and decided to go teach for 2 years at this college called William Jewell. Now you remember I said I was a Truman Scholar. Well, the Truman Scholarship Foundation and the Truman family are affiliated in Kansas City. And every year, the new Truman Scholars would come in to the Truman Library, and they would have a week-long leadership seminar, kind of like this, and they would invite former Truman Scholars to come back and teach something. So every year, I would go and I would teach legislative process to the new Truman Scholars. And ultimately, the president of William Jewell College said, I think you'd be a great teacher. You ever thought about teaching? I was sort of like, no. I had, things I'm trying to do in the legislature. And he said, well, take a break and come and teach. Best job I ever had by far. I loved it. I felt like I got to work with young minds instead of kind of closed older minds. I hate to say that, but that's what it felt like at the legislature at the time. I was still pretty young, and I really wasn't sure how I was going to find that sense of purpose in my road ahead. And so after a personal move found me in Memphis, Tennessee, I thought, okay, well, I still want to teach, maybe, do some law, I don't know, we'll look and see. And for 9 months, I applied for jobs, and I never got a single interview. It was the first time in my career that I couldn't find a job. I usually had jobs handed to me all the time. And it was a real reality check that, guess what, kid, life is still a hustle, like you always knew growing up. You got to get out there and make something happen. Well, the largest employer in Memphis, Tennessee was FedEx. And, it was early days of FedEx. I knew what they did, but I didn't really want to go private sector. But then I needed a job. And so a person introduced me to someone there, and they said, well, FedEx is kind of looking to do this sort of diversity, social justice thing. They're looking for a lawyer, so maybe you ought to try for that. So I was like, sure, I'll try it. I got hired, and I will never forget going into the FedEx cafeteria one day, It's my first experience in corporate America. And in the lunchroom, all the black people were sitting over here, all the white people were over here. Anybody else that they didn't really know what to do with was somewhere in the middle. And I remember thinking, this is not cool. This is a problem. And so the work that the diversity team was doing was about changing that inside corporate America and helping FedEx create policies and hiring practices that brought more diverse people in so that they could innovate for this company, that they could reach new markets that culturally they didn't reflect or understand. And I found that hugely powerful, and that began my new career. Ultimately, I got hired away and went to Nike, which was a dream job for me as the US Director of Global Diversity for Nike. I was a runner, and that was runner's nirvana, except I had to move to Oregon. My family was like, Oregon? I was like, no, it's Oregon, and yeah, it's way out on the West Coast, and yeah, I don't know anybody there, but I'm gonna go. And it was a great experience, one that really changed my perception of the Pacific Northwest. Stayed there 4 years. I got recruited away for my first vice president job. I was still under 40. I was climbing the corporate ladder. And I went to work for a healthcare company called Aetna out in Connecticut. Again, Connecticut? But I thought, I was so ambitious that I thought, you have to take risks, you have to do trade-offs, you make smart decisions, you research a lot of places. Some jobs I said no to, but others I wanted to grow, and Aetna was really probably my biggest professional growth job. I was vice president of global diversity and inclusion there for 5 years. Then I got recruited to Campbell Soup. This was an interesting move because it was the first time I chose to live where I had a relative. My only sister lived there. She'd had the first child in our family, and she and her husband needed a lot of help. I wasn't interested in a soup company, but it allowed me to get close to her, and we could, bring our lives together again, which was awesome. And then ultimately, I got recruited by Microsoft. That was basically my desire to return to the Pacific Northwest, which I love, and also to work for a big, large global company and to build my skill on a global platform. And so that's what I chose to do. And I recently retired, yay, about a year and a half ago. Oops, I keep messing up. Let me go. Okay. And so as I think about this sense of purpose, and you saw that whole career journey, it was a lot of fits and starts and things that I never knew would come together for me. And life is like that. I am a planner. I am a person who has a plan. Any planners in the room? Where you think you got your plan going and you're ready to go, right? Be ready for disruption. Be ready to know that the plan isn't always in your control, and know that a lot of times you're going to have to make some big changes. But after a while, I found that meaningful work for me sometimes meant more than the money or the benefits. It was what impact I could have, and I think many of you may find yourselves in that situation. I needed to make sense of what I did because, again, it fueled my motivation to stick with it, because working in the corporate sector is a very difficult environment. Especially the tech sector, probably one of the hardest places I've ever worked. And so being able to believe in yourself, to not doubt yourself is huge. For so many of us, doubt plays a big part of whether or not we think we can do things. And yet I'd seen doubt can can thwart more dreams than failure. So really being able to build your confidence is huge. And don't be afraid to make a change. I tell you what, telling my parents that I no longer was going to practice law was probably one of the hardest things that I ever had to do, because that law degree I got was really for them. It was a law degree that my whole family was proud of, and it was a hard thing to tell them. But ultimately they saw that my new career suited me better. This is a great quote because it really epitomizes everything that was going on with me. It says, every time I thought I was being rejected from something good, I was actually being redirected to something better. And I want you to remember that, because so many times you'll apply for things, whether it's even in the classroom, maybe you compete for scholarships, or you didn't get quite the grade or what you were hoping to understand. There's a lesson in everything, and there's learning that is continuous all the time. And so, I will say to you that rethink how you look at failure or rethink how you look at rejection, because there's sometimes a gift that you never knew waiting for you down the line. So the path forward 30 years, I've had an amazing career. I don't know if being on the cover of magazines means anything. My mother she used to carry these in the trunk of her car and take them to church and give them out to everybody at Mass. But you can see I've had a number of sort of different careers. I like to say that there is a theme of things that stitched them all together for me over the years. But it's been a phenomenal thing. I think seeing the world because of some of the jobs I've had, especially Microsoft, any place I ever wanted to go in the world, I got to go. And I was so humbled by it, because I used to think about my grandfather, who had a third grade education, taught himself to read and write, and who, for him, English was a second language. But he would always tell me to leave my hometown and go see the world, because that's what he would do if he had an education. And I used to think every time I saw the world, I saw it for him. So there were some wonderful things that happened for me and continue to happen to me. Now I'm semi-retired. I have a light consulting business, emphasis on light, because I like my downtime and living that comfortable life. Anybody know what that is? If you saw Black Panther, this is my spirit animal. The Dora Milaje, the general, right? She was the bodyguard of Black Panther. But inside me every day, I felt like I had to be the warrior princess. As a Black woman, I refused to let other people's limited thinking determine what I could be and determine my level of success. My mantra was to be the best I could every day, to treat people with respect, but I also outworked everybody. If I knew I was new to something like diversity work when I first discovered it, once I decided, wow, I think I can make a career with this, I studied everything. I attended conferences, I researched things. I just focused on learning and doing and trying. And when my boss asked for someone to try something or volunteer, my hand was always up. And so it came from childhood, though, just outworking everybody and really proving yourself. But all that proving gets draining. And at some point in time, you have to declare that I am enough. And she, my spirit animal, reminds me that I am enough. In terms of building skills, I share a few with you that I think are essential. Almost doesn't matter what you do in life, but never stop learning. We used to define in corporate culture, sometimes you have the learners and the knowers. And if you work around a lot of knowers, it's a difficult experience. They don't feel there's anything that you can teach them or that they can learn from anybody else. But you have to continue to learn. Every time I change jobs, you notice what? I changed industries. So I went from FedEx, which is packaging. I went to Nike, which is fitness. I went to Aetna, which was insurance and healthcare. And I went to Microsoft, which was technology. So every time I had to learn a new business and a new business model. And I had to figure out, how can I contribute to the success of this business doing what I do around social change and justice? Take initiative towards your own career. So many times people would say to me, well, how do I develop myself? Why doesn't the company do this or do that? You own your development. But you can ask for things to support that, but you have to take initiative around your career. That means developing an effective network, seeking out mentors, and really taking the feedback honestly. And seek those mentors who are going to tell you the truth. If you're a first-gen college-bound kid, it's hard. All your aunts and uncles, everybody's going to tell you you're the best thing ever. They're going to tell you can be anything you want to be, and most of that is true. But at the end of the day, some of it, they really don't know. So you got to have a blend of people who do know the world you're headed into and can tell you the truth about that. Take some smart risks and push yourself to get out and figure out what is it that I lack. Because a lot of times it's hard to it's hard to self-assess. It's hard to self-audit when you know you're not fully contributing the way that your team needs you to, or your boss needs to, or your teachers need you to. And you got to have that honest dialogue with yourself and say, okay, what am I not really good at, and how do I get better at it? Increasing visibility is great. Because so many times there are such negative stereotypes around people who look like me. I knew that when I got up, I had to be prepared and poised, but I had to be visible so people would see me, really see what I brought to the table. And that continues today for your generation. At the same time, be humble. My mom used to say, look, you're no better than anybody and nobody's better than you. So you're not superior to people and they're not superior to you. But be humble, right? Take your work seriously, but not yourself. And respect others no matter what their positions are. In terms of what I continue to learn, it's a lot about integrity for me. You know, there were times when I walked away from jobs or situations because people were doing the wrong thing, and I knew it. And having the courage to speak up can cost you at times, so you have to weigh that. But integrity was important for me. Learning from my failures, I've had many. You know, I wish you many manageable failures like I had, because the failures are much more empowering and teaching than the successes. A lot of times people take things personally, and maybe it's not always about you. Decisions made, outcomes derived. Be careful that you don't take things too personally, because it's easy to do that, especially when you're a person of color and you're in majority spaces, and you know the story, you know the stereotypes. You're not sure if you're paranoid, what just happened was real or not, but you do have to check it. And then this notion of who we are is made up of moments and choices. If we constantly choose to be kind and hardworking, then we become kind and hardworking. I'd say, again, take those risks, take informed, calculated risks. Attitude's everything, never give up. I think my mom used to tell me that all the time. You can't control things that aren't yours, but you can control how you react to them and the effect that they have on you. It's so true. And I know that you're here for leadership, and I think continually you'll hear discussions about empathy in the workplace or in education and in leadership. More and more focus on mindfulness as leaders and being able to have this shared humanity with people so that you connect and relate to them and you perform better together. I always tried to hire the smartest people I could. I thought talent and passion was a good combination. Try to be a role model whenever I can. Again, I love humor. I love to have fun. I work really, really hard, and so I try to play hard too. And also, thanking people and celebrating successes is huge for me. I had a dad who used to say, he would say, hard work is its own reward. So like, you know, don't look for like getting a gift every time you got an A or something. He's like, that's your job. Your job is to go to school and make good grades. That's all you got to do. Great quote here. This one really speaks to me personally, so I thought I would share it. Despite what you think you know, sometimes your plans may be interrupted because you were designed for a purpose. You are on a mission to achieve greatness, and no matter what those obstacles are that lie in your path, you will reach your destination. Remember, God's grace is sufficient. And I think for you guys, being here right now is a big part of your true purpose. As young leaders, seeking out ways you can grow and develop, that is powerful. And I'm so thankful that the Macomb School is offering programs like this, and 10 years is amazing. So really take full advantage. And I think as you think about the path you're on, whatever it is, and you understand what it is that will take you to your destination, I hope that the words I shared in my story and the conversation we have in Q&A inspires you to get up every day, not once, not twice, but every day, and live this to its purpose. Kick butt, wake up, kick butt, and repeat it. So thank you for your time. I think we're going to do some Q&A now.
Yes, please. Okay. Okay. If y'all have any questions, you can go on.
Anybody with questions? Somebody's got some questions. It's just hard to be in the first one, but yeah, right here.
What do you tell yourself when like you sometimes kind of like feel like defeated or tired? Like how do you like keep going? Like what do you tell yourself to?
That's a great question, because I think even in times like today, the political scene and what's happening throughout our country and the world sometimes can feel overwhelming. It can feel hopeless, you know. But at the same time, I tell myself, despite this environment and what's happening, we are not hopeless. I am not hopeless. And I think when I look out at this room and see you, I have renewed hope, you know, that the future is in good hands, because people are stepping up. People are thinking about their futures. They want to make a difference. I think there's a renewed sense of urgency because the political climate is so challenging. But for me, I just think about the sacrifices of people in my family who worked so hard so I could be here. And I never take, you know, a day for granted. It's interesting, my mom, who's almost 90, used to, for years, literally every day I would drive to work, all my career, I would start my day with a phone call to my mother. And then I end my day with a phone call to my mother. This has gone on for all, you know, 50 years practically. But she would say to me, "What's the best part of your day?" And I would say, "Oh, going home. God, I can't stand work. I got here." And she would say, "The best part of my day is I woke up, as I saw a new day." And it took me a few years to kind of sort of let that sink in and marinate. You kind of got to get like past 30 or 40 to start to feel that. But it is this notion that life is not a dress rehearsal, and that there's a lot to stress and make you feel defeated at times, but you have to know that you were put here for a purpose. It's not always easy to see it, but the faith that you have, the belief in yourself, and again, fight that doubt, because doubt can be so destructive. Surround yourselves with people who are positive. Like my dad used to say, be with people who lift you up and not pull you down. It's so easy to get pulled down. So sometimes that means you got to change your friends. You got to make some decisions in your life. But I think if you live your life by design and not by default, you can build that resilience. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Couple of hands over here.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm from Laredo.
Hi, Sophia.
So out of all the careers that you've pursued over the years, has there ever been a moment that's been rewarding and has stood out of all the rewarding moments?
Wow, so many. Because of the work I did, especially in diversity, I think the most rewarding moments were when people I didn't know who worked at the company would send me emails and say, you know, I'm so appreciative for what you are doing, because, you know, I had one person who came out as transgendered, which was a really scary thing to do in the workplace. And, you know, I basically built a relationship with her as she transed to a man. And she was half black and half Laotian. And so she had a lot of cultural challenges at home, explaining this to her family. But just being able to hear her story and be a part of the change as she trans to a man, and her success in the workplace in doing that, and how she became a pioneer, or he became a pioneer for other trans employees, and it created a huge global movement inside Microsoft. So I think when people tell you that what you're doing really does make a difference, that's a full circle moment, you know, for me. And then I would say probably most recently when I retired, I attended a diversity conference, and unbeknownst to me, I was given this leadership award from peers from across all the major companies, Facebook, Google, Twitter, all the other tech companies. They gave me this beautiful leadership legacy award for the work I had done, so it was nice. Okay, thanks.
Hello, my name is Shayla. My question is, I know you came from humble beginnings and you've obviously have great success, but was the probability of disappointing your parents ever unbearable? And how did that affect you pursuing your dreams?
Yeah, so in 1968, when I talked about that was a big deal in my life. It really was. I mean, I had to, before the Christmas holidays, I had to be tested by the white school because they thought my academic experience was inferior to theirs. They had better books, they had teachers who'd gone to college. The black school didn't. And so I had to take all these tests, and I did well, except I was probably a BC in math. And so they wanted me to take a lot of extra courses to get ready for January. So I spent my whole Christmas holiday doing all that stuff. And I remember one day my mother said to me, because I said to her, you know, all of a sudden I just said, well, I don't feel like I'm ready in math. And she was like, no, you're ready in math. All my children are ready in math. And she was like, don't let white people's view of you get in your head. And so when you go in that school, you are going to do well in math. And I remember the pressure I felt, because right away I didn't do well in math. And then we went through another weekend where my mother grilled me only on math problems the whole weekend. And by that Monday, I was a genius in math. But it was, and it was just the profound sense of doubt I had, because I saw what the academic record said about me, and I had to get past it. But my brother and sister and I, we all understood the high expectations my mother and dad had for us. We were not going to disappoint them. You know, I saw them working multiple jobs to send us to the private schools. And thankfully, I had siblings who were high achievers. My brother's a physicist, graduated with a PhD from Rice in physics. My sister's a microbiologist, graduated with a master's in microbiology from Rice. So I was the youngest, and I just kind of had to tow it. I had to figure it out. And I think after a while, we saw so much negativity in our community that we knew, and I think we felt privileged to have parents who cared so much, because I had cousins who didn't, and their lives didn't change as much, you know? So it was a lot of pressure. And when I was probably in my college years, I would say to my mom every time like I was angry or frustrated, I would say, well, it's because you sent me to the white school when I was 8 and I have all these issues now. And so I just, the stuff you throw back at your parents, and she would just like look at me like, what? But you do, it is heavy. It is heavy and hard. And here's one failure I had that was really tough. I failed the bar exam my first time here in Austin as I graduated. It's a 2-part exam, so I passed one part and I failed the second. And it was shameful, I'd never failed anything. And so I had to retake it, which fortunately all my friends failed too. Something about, failing in numbers helped. But it was stuff like that you had to tell your family, and it's just really, really hard. But ultimately it all worked out, and they've been super proud of us, and we've made it work. But it's an individual journey. My sister had a harder time. She felt like the expectations were too much at times. But for the most part, she turned out okay. That's on video, oops. Another question? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tanya, and based on what you've been mentioned before about your parents' motivation and support and all of that, like your history, your background, where you come from, do you believe that support and motivation affected you in some way? Like, what if you didn't have it? Would you have succeeded as far as you came today?
I'm having a hard time understanding the second part of you. What's you saying?
Okay, so I said based on all you have mentioned before, your parents, your history, where you come from, your background and all of that, and all the support that your parents had and your siblings, do you believe that support and motivation affected you in a way? Would you have succeeded as much as you are right now?
Absolutely. If I didn't have parents who set a bar for us, who set expectations, I doubt that I would have ever left my hometown. I think that my mother had left Louisiana. She actually, at 16, she graduated early from high school, and she was a math whiz. I often wonder what she could have become, had she had a college education. But she did leave the area, and she went to live with an aunt in New York. And when she experienced life in a big city and far away from the South, she saw that Black people could thrive and have amazing careers and lives living in other places. So she had to come back home to help raise her younger brothers and sisters. And I think it really, that time away, that time in New York, and seeing a different world, a much more progressive world, it really had an effect on her and how she wanted to raise her children. And so I think without that, I know I wouldn't have pushed, I wouldn't have been able to succeed. And I think my siblings were helpful too, because we all went through it. We were all like a year apart, good Catholic family. And when I would see them doing well, I wanted to do well. And we supported each other. My mother raised us to be best friends. That was hard sometimes. But it paid off because we still are incredibly close. We talk text every day, so I know it worked for us. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, next.
My name is Avis, and hello, Gwen. I'm from FAR, and we've seen how you've mentioned your influences and your motivations, but I'm actually interested in seeing how you've influenced others and how a person can be a good influence to other people.
Yeah, so I believe in paying it forward. And someone asked me, my dear friend Talia here, who is my warm-up coach before I came up here, she's asked me lots of great questions about working with young people and the importance of it. I remember even right after I graduated from UT and I lived in Austin, I started doing volunteer work with young girls who were teenage moms. And I adopted a daughter, basically. I was in my 20s, but she was 15 and she'd already had her first child. And the notion was, how do we help these they were all mostly Black and Latina girls, how do we help them aspire to more in their lives and think about the fact that they were now mothers, but not see that as an obstacle to what they could be. The young lady I worked with was so bright and so capable, but really couldn't see past high school for herself. And so spending time with her, taking her to eat like Chinese food. She'd never been to a Chinese restaurant. She'd never seen chopsticks before. Taking her bowling, trying to expose her to a different world which was what I would try to do with her. So it was like my first, but I've had many experiences working with young people, participating in as a mentor for people. I still mentor a lot of people at Microsoft all around the world who reach out to me and just want to talk or just want to, ask things. I still have mentees, but even as a mentor, I learned so much from the people whose lives I'm connected to. The learning is mutual because we all have different life experiences and we all internalize things differently. So yeah, I believe in that sort of shared learning, that mentoring, that helping hand. I'm not sure I can always help, but I can always listen. And I can always maybe, help you take the heaviness off of it and find something positive and progressive. That's really what I try to do, is flip the script for people. What looks bleak may not necessarily be that way if you change your perspective and change your attitude. Okay?
Thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Trinity, and through the presentation, I noticed that you did travel a lot. So I was wondering if traveling was ever a challenge for you, as a part of being away from your family or being away from your normal setting or your origins, I guess I could say. So yeah, I was just wondering if that was
About travel? Yeah. Well, I was the kid who wanted to get away and see the world, and so little things that happen, even as a college student, my parents had a rule. We all had to go to the university in our hometown. My mother didn't think we were ready for the bigger world. And so all of us had to go to the University of Louisiana before we could then go off to grad school because, yes, we were all going to grad school. We knew it. We didn't know what we were studying, but we were all going to grad school. And so I kept pushing to try to go abroad, go study here, go study there. It was very challenging. I did get a full scholarship to do a summer at Georgetown University, and that really was a great experience to live in DC. I also worked on Capitol Hill and took classes at DC. And then before I graduated undergrad, I applied to the London School of Economics for a summer program. I got in and I got a full scholarship. And my parents said, no, you cannot go to London. We don't know anybody in London. We don't know anybody who can take care of you if something happens to you in London, so you, Missy, will not be going to London. And that was hugely disappointing for me because I know it would have really impacted my life even more. So as soon as I got jobs where I could travel, I did. And I loved it. I embraced it all. To be honest, many times being outside of the US was the most invigorating thing. I never saw myself as a black person that needed to be watched or monitored. I saw myself more respected. I felt people embrace me more. And I was just really an American. I wasn't labeled as anything less than that. And so it was a very eye-opening experience everywhere I went, across Asia, certainly across Europe, Latin America, South America. Now traveling is a hassle. And there are countries that, the first time I went to India, wow. As much as I thought I was prepared, wow, nothing prepares you for like that airport and what goes on in there. And the first time you're in airports where there are military presence and they've got Uzis and submachine guns and you're like, whoa, toe the line. I mean, it just wakes you up in a way that makes you a global person, a global perspective. It helps you see the world the way it is, but and not so much the way you thought. And it really pushes you to be more open. And I certainly learned a lot about the press we get in this country is so filtered and maybe not always honest. And so I grew a lot from those experiences and I cherish them. I still hope to do more travel. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much, Gwen.
You're welcome.
We have a token of our appreciation on behalf of the 2019 class, and I think Yvette Zuniga is going to come up and present you with her gift. Oh, there she is.
Hi, Yvette. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. You want a photo op?
Yes.
All right, there we go. Thank you so much. You are welcome. Thank you, my dear. Mm-hmm.
Well, we are very fortunate to have her come in and just thank you for your inspiring story and for reminding our students about what's possible. And I know as they get ready for their journey, I know it can be one that takes twists and turns, but it's just the journey itself that I think makes it worthwhile. Students, now is the time for you to get ready for your work group time, those projects, those challenges that you selected last night. Now you get to spend the time kind of really digging into how you can be our problem solvers for the future. So now is the time to say thank you to our table host. And again, on behalf of the Academy, thank you volunteers for being with us today. We appreciate it. We cannot handle or make today possible. And I know our students have business cards, so if they want to make sure they're using those, that would be very handy. And that will conclude today's luncheon. Again, thank you, hosts, for being with us. Students, your team leaders will escort you to your work group rooms here in the Union. And good luck with your projects.